for being back. If you just joined us, you're still on to Enterprise Morning, reaching you from Enterprise Television. Let's get to our conversation for today. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has called on Nigeria to enhance its tax revenue by broadening the tax base and intensifying efforts to combat tax evasion. Speaking at the spring meetings of the IMF and the World Bank in Washington, D.C., IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva emphasized the importance of these measures for Nigeria and other African nations to navigate current global economic challenges. Georgieva highlighted that while Africa has seen some of the fastest growing economies in recent years, low-income and fragile states are lagging behind. She noted that for oil-producing countries like Nigeria, declining oil prices add pressure to national budgets. To mitigate these challenges, she recommended strengthening fiscal buffers and leveraging technology to improve tax collection and reduce evasion. Additionally, Georgieva urged African nations to address corruption, which she stated casts a shadow over the entire continent, affecting perceptions and economic prospects. We still have Emeka Madunagu. Thank you so very much, Emeka, for being here. We truly do appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right, Emeka, let's get talking on this particular matter. You know, we've said so much. Nigerians have spoken so much. Even the Labour Congress, NLC, had equally, given their fair share of thoughts on IMF and its contribution to Nigeria. Of course, it's the contribution, and that's awesome, not encouraging, if we might say that. But speak to us on this recent submission by that lady, Ms. Georgieva, who had said that Nigeria should further enlarge its tax bracket so more people can pay tax, and if possible, arrest those who are evading tax in Nigeria.
No, she didn't. She didn't say that. Basically, what she's saying is that we should improve the efficiency of tax collection, and and then to reduce evasion. And of course, evasion comes from inefficient collection. Evasion comes from inefficient data. Evasion comes from the unwillingness of government officials to act in the interest of the state, to actually collect revenues, and so help people to evade their taxes. And there are so many ways by which people do such things in Nigeria, especially when they are well connected, to state actors. So she was also saying that Nigeria should adopt medium-term fiscal policies to make sure that, and also implement buffers to withstand shocks. Because ad hoc measures, like what the Central Bank of Nigeria has been doing in terms of trying to control the exchange rate, have not really worked. You can see that currently, for some time now, the dollar has lost a lot of value, but it has not translated into any benefit to Nigeria. Oil prices have gone down to the 60s, but it has not translated to any real value to the man on the street in Nigeria. So what it means is that taxes for a country like Nigeria still remain a key element in expenditure. And so what the IMF is basically saying, I think, is that we should make sure that our tax collection is transparent. It's not just about arresting people, but encouraging people to pay their taxes.
But Emeka,
and then ensuring that
just to digress on that particular matter, when we talk about tax, there's one thought that comes to the minds of Nigerians, and it's looking more like a nightmare to Nigerians, and that is the statement by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. When he was, campaigning to be the president of the country. He did say that one of his a significant approach to economic development is widening the tax bracket, reduce economic growth and purchasing power, which of course today the middle class in Nigeria is no longer in existence. So the question is, how can we actually achieve sustainable economic growth when we are slowing down the economy, reducing the purchasing power, increasing tax? Who are we really taxing here? Is it not the people that should grow the economy? But in Nigeria, we do not have them any longer.
I think that statement by President Bola Tinubu was quite unfortunate. It shows a gross misunderstanding, very unfortunate, of the dynamics of the Nigerian economy. You see, when people come out with these things, oh, there's money in Nigeria, there's a lot of money in Nigeria, it shows you, empty realizations, empty assessments of what they call money in Nigeria. The fact that there are people in bars, that you find so many cars in bars, doesn't mean that there is money in the economy. The fact that you find out that you see that there are people holding parties, out of 200 million people on a Saturday, on a Saturday, how many are holding parties? How many are attending parties? Well, because you drove past a certain district where you have some event centers, and then you conclude that out of 22 million people said to reside in Lagos, that there is money in Lagos. Money is not calculated that way. You don't calculate based on consumption, conspicuous consumption. You make your calculations based on productivity, based on revenue. How much revenue is coming into the public coffers? You look at the Human Development Index. How are the lives of the people being improved? One presidential aide was just trying to make a mess of himself the other time, saying that with the equivalent of $1, somebody can have a good meal somewhere. And then at the end of the day, after having a good meal, what happens next? Will he sleep at that place? Will his children go to school there? Is the meal only for him? What about his children? Would he attend to other needs, medical needs and all that? So, when the World Bank says that millions of Nigerians live under $2 per day, it talks about the sum total of all of the things they need to thrive. They need to live on from day to day as human beings. It's not just talking about food. That is where some of these people, in their attempt to twist, to gaslight Nigerians, they think they are clever. They just look at they just try to bring some false symbolism, some fox symbolism. And then, like a cleric, a pastor was saying that Nigerian medical doctors are trained on 500,000, whereas elsewhere it costs more and all of that. And they're trained on 500,000 because the government subsidizes. And then why are people running away? All these simplistic definitions actually give a troubling picture about how people whom you think are well educated, how they understand, how they actually deal with issues, both simple and complex. So what they try to do sometimes is to compare Nigeria with other, parts of the world. They tell you, standard of living is also high in the UK. In fact, the Nigerians work more than people in the UK. How is that possible? Does that work out? It's an unregulated environment. Based on what statistics? The pastor was saying that Nigeria should talk of doing 2 or 3 jobs. Is it people who are stuck in one job? Like the woman that was that one celebrity was trying to make some capital out of, who went to do some cleaning job around 4 a.m. with her 9-year-old daughter somewhere in Ikoyi, Lagos, and she was trying to make everywhere. Well, of course, people dealt with her, and she had to apologize. There are certain things, the woman involved said she was earning 19,000 in the cleaning job, and she had to go along with her daughter because there was nowhere for her to keep her daughter. That 19,000 was all they had to depend on in a whole month. A survey has come out talking about the salaries that Nigerians earn. You know that you look at the mean salary of Nigerians is 35,000. How many Nigerians are earning 200,000 naira and above? What percentage of the economy? What percentage of the population, I mean, is earning 200,000 naira and above? So when we drill down to these hard figures, you find out that, look at, for instance, you look at this CBEX Ponzi scheme. Oh, you will say, yes, well, we told you there's money in Nigeria. But let me tell you, a lot of that money, I believe, came from politicians. A lot of that money came from politicians. Maybe rogue civil servants, maybe rogue security agents, putting money, turning the economy into a money doubling scheme. Because 1.3 trillion is not easily available on the streets of Nigeria, except from political actors, except from people in the criminal industry, kidnappers, and the rest of them, except from such people. But that money doesn't exist anywhere. You see, people putting on a uniform to attend a wedding. That this Ashebi was bought for 50,000. You don't know how many months those who bought that Ashebi have to pay for that. For that uniform. You just assume that, okay, somebody says, I'm wedding. My Ashebi is 50,000. And then somebody will just just transfer 50,000 from their account. It's not that way. Things are really difficult. Things are really expensive in the country. There are a lot of, how many people are able to afford 3 square meals? There was a report that said that a complete pot of stew in Nigeria, to make a complete pot of stew in Nigeria, you need 25,000 naira. Yes. A lot of people have to now depend on pomo, on this cow hide for nutrition. There are people, somebody was telling me the other day that in his family, they just make a bawi soup without any nutrient, nothing in it. But you see some people throwing away money and then you say there's money in Nigeria. It doesn't work that way. That is what the IMF is talking about. The IMF is talking about social nets. But I think the IMF themselves are also being dubious and criminally ingenious in drawing the economy back. If you look at the country report for Nigeria, the IMF country report for Nigeria for 2024, you cannot see anywhere where the IMF talked about increasing productivity, advising Nigerian government to increase productivity through increased manufacturing. Why? Because if it advises Nigeria to ramp up manufacturing, where will Western nations dump the goods they are producing? So that means that our leaders must also be very careful. You won't see anything about IMF ever talking about ramping up farming, ramping up agricultural production, ramping up agro-processing. Why? Because they want us to continue to import food from their countries. They don't want to say, you are saying that government should be giving Nigerians 25,000. Government said they gave how many millions of Nigerians, but I don't know any. I've asked people around, I don't know anybody who has received that money. Now, such money should actually be put to productivity, not to consumption. If you use that, if you convert that money into procurement, into acquisition of farmland, for instance, and then seedlings, stems, herbicide, pesticides, and all of that. Of course, you will see that it would encourage Nigerians to go more into farming. If you remove the insecurity in the farms, remove the criminal headsmen and all of that, all those kidnappers and others, I believe that agriculture still remains still remains that area that can rescue Nigeria from these economic problems. Because if we can feed ourselves, we can reason better. If we can feed ourselves, we can increase productivity. Out of agricultural products, we can make a lot of things that we need instead of importing milk. If we delve more into ranching, we'll be able to produce more milk locally. We will groom more cattle instead of dragging them up and down as the herdsmen do. Right conditions, give them the right kind of diet, and ensure that we can produce milk in large quantities.
Very, very true,
And then,
yeah.
Is it cassava? Is it cassava, for instance? Cassava is a crop that has a variety of uses. It's a superfood. We talk about diseases in Nigeria. We depend on the West for aid to deal with health issues, whereas we have superfoods.
Yeah, sorry for that.
We can use to, superfoods that we can use to keep Nigerians healthy. So for me, even though we get advice from IMF and all that, but we should try to tailor that advice to our local needs. We should talk about adaptability and sustainability. For how long will you keep giving people 25,000 naira?
But Emeka, if I might ask, sorry to digress, if I might ask, why is it then very difficult for the likes of, Wale Edun, Kadoso, and the president himself to realize some of these things? Is it that they are oblivious to that, or they are rather being very, stiff about ensuring that there is an economic stimulation in Nigeria, rather than listening to the IMF that is not in any way helping in the stimulation of economic growth in the country?
Yeah, you see, they have actually tied themselves to the apron strings of the IMF, and that ensures that they can borrow. They can keep borrowing. I told you, talked about the governor who borrowed 1 trillion naira for his state and later turned around that the money he borrowed was too much. Now, juxtapose that with somebody like Governor Chukwuma Soludo of Anambra State, who said since he got into office over 3 years ago, he has not borrowed a dime. He generated revenue, which is what that the other 35 states signed up to it, but he refused to sign up to it because he knew it was a bad loan. But look at it. Other states just signing up loans. So that is the sad thing. And you find out that it has been said again and again that you cannot borrow your way to prosperity. Borrowing should just be a short-term thing. But the thing is that we go more for commercial loans instead of going for concessionary loans. Loans that we can actually use, loans with less stringent conditions, loans with flexible conditions that will make repayment easy. So we just keep borrowing for education, for health, for all kinds of things. Even a former minister of Women Affairs, said they borrowed, was it 40 million naira to distribute pads, sanitary pads to schoolgirls. So you tell me, why would we keep subjecting ourselves to such, low-grade thinking? When we say we cut the cost of governance, that's why the IMF is talking about spending, that the government should be more prudent. But what have you seen? You saw $5 billion on a presidential yacht. You saw $1 billion on an aircraft, presidential jet. You've seen 1 billion naira for a presidential Escalade, German Escalade. You've seen billions spent on vehicles for President Tinubu, his wife, and some other people. You've seen 21 billion naira spent on the renovation of the vice president's residence. Then you've seen all these humongous amounts being spent on medical tourism. The president keeps going to France and coming. going and coming. And so what do you find at the end of the day? They resort to borrowing because they have to keep the naira down, even lower than the CD, lower than the CFA, so that they can, when they collect these loans, they can in dollars, they can change them to naira and then fly away, indulge in reckless, wasteful expenditure. That is where our problem lies. If we cut the cost of governance, if we improve our hospitals, of course, we'll find out that things will be much better in the country. We'll be better able to manage the situation in the country. And so that is why we, that aspect of the advice from the IMF, that's the only aspect I actually am interested in, that we should be more prudent in expenditure. Thank you.
Very, very well. We should be more prudent in expenditure. Profligacy is not part of any sustainable country, neither is it of any good to the leadership of any country that wants to see growth for its nation. Unfortunately, Nigeria, the opposite remains the case, where despite the dire need of the country, those in authority have made it compulsory to spend and continuously spending on the little that we have, and of course exposing the rest of us to hardships that Nigerians never actually bargained for. Thank you so very much, Emeka, for being here. We truly do appreciate you once more.
Thank you very much.
All right, people, that's just about the time we have. We'd love to appreciate you for making this a date with us. Please do well to visit us. If you may, you can always find us at enterprisetvnews.com. You may equally like, comment, and follow us on all our social media platforms at Enterprise TV7. I'm Henry Igwebike. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth. Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth. Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth. Enterprise TV, a tradition of
This is Homo Politicus on Enterprise Television. Kingsley Bass is my name. Thanks for joining the broadcast. Let's talk politics, core politics in Nigeria towards 2027. Well, it's 2025 now. As a matter of fact, it's the month of April 2025. But the talks ahead of the 2027 general election are started. Well, in the dynamic landscape of Nigerian politics, change, is constant. But are we witnessing a shift too drastic for democracy to withstand in Nigeria? In recent months, we've seen several happenings within the political scene, especially a wave of defections from opposition parties, with prominent figures crossing over to the governing All Progressives Congress. This trend has raised alarm bells and sparked heated debates, and particularly one question which has been on the lips of many persons, political observers and Nigerians alike: is Nigeria gradually tilting toward a one-party state? What does this mean for the health of the Nigerian democracy, the strength of political institutions, and the voices of dissent in Nigeria? Today, we get straight into that conversation, a very crucial one. And I want to know, is this realignment a natural evolution in politics, or it's a red flag signaling democratic backsliding in Nigeria. I'm joined at this moment by political commentator Gbenga Yonuga Paul. He joins me virtually. Gbenga, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Kingsley Bassey is my name. Welcome to the show. Gbenga, let's talk real quick about one of the biggest defections we've seen in the past few months. Maybe some big ones to come, but the defection of the governor of Delta State from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress, alongside the structure of the PDP in Delta State, has sparked a debate since this happened. And well, the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the 2023 general election, just to put things in further perspective, 2 years ago, who happens to be the immediate past governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa, has joined the incumbent governor, to move to the All Progressives Congress. Do you think, Gbenga, that these defections indicate a collapse in opposition party structures, or you think there's a lack of ideological difference between parties?
Well, as you know, politics is always about interests, and everybody aligns and realigns their interests based on the political expediencies of the day. And so for me, I don't see anything special in what they are doing, because politicians worldwide always want to survive, and so in some countries, they will openly defect. In some other countries, they will not defect, but they will be working for the party in power behind the scene, while coming online or on the scene to bash them as though there is enmity. But the style that the Nigerian political space usually play up is that to show loyalty, you have to defect. And once you defect, let me borrow the word of former APC national chairman, Adams Oshiomhole, who is a senator now, who said, and I quote, that once you defect to APC, all sins are forgiven. And so I see that playing out, because a lot of them have business interests that staying out of power at the federal level will affect. And so for those benefits and some other reasons best known to them, they do all of these things. And to answer your question earlier, where you said, are we sliding into a one-party state? I don't believe that we are sliding into a one-party state. I believe that these defections at this time around speaks to the political sagacity of the president, who has a master stroke in bringing all hands on deck and bringing everybody on board to work for the interest of his own party. As can be seen, there is no known evidence to show that maybe the president coerced those who defected. It just must have made them.
But as you reference, Gbenga, we know this is politics. Yes. This is politics, and there is no impossibility, not of a coercion, not of a threat, but as you reference, this move by politicians, knowing that if they align with the party at the center, maybe indeed their sins will be forgiven. This is coming just months after the former Delta State governor, the vice presidential candidate of the PDP, who has now moved, I'm talking Ifeanyi Okowa, was taken into custody for questioning by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Some have said that, well, maybe he's doing this remembering what Adams Oshiomhole once said, his sins could be forgiven.
Even at that, the president was in the opposition for between 2007 to 2015. That's almost 8 years that he was in the opposition. And during those periods, he was made to stand trial with the Code of Conduct Tribunal and several other trials. But he came out unscathed. We know how Nigerian politics goes. And of course, the judicial system. Once you have good lawyers and you have a good war chest, you can prolong case till infinitum, such that nothing will happen to you. So while that might be part of the reasons, but I don't think that is a reason enough to make him, except they are not men enough, bold enough, or strong enough to have a watertight case, that will make them untouchable. But be that as it may, if there is any form of coercion, we would have heard all of these things would have leaked in one way or the other, that it was this coercion, that coercion, that. But from all the stories that are coming from different sources in the grapevine, there does not seem to be any form of coercion. It is more of political survival for an interest for many of them. Don't forget that some northern power bloc, they are aligning and realigning to make sure that the North votes in bloc, if possible, for their candidates in the coalition they are trying to make. And so I am seeing this. It's my own perspective, it may be wrong, that the president knows that he will still get his vote from the North because he still has a lot of his supporters there, but he's trying to make sure that he gets this time around a bloc vote from the southern middle belt axis of the country, such that the middle belt and southern part of the country, both southeast, south, and southwest, will be unanimous in their voice through their votes come next election.
Talking about votes, right, how does this trend, this wave of defections and the nature of defections that we're seeing, it's not one of those defections that you hear, one particular political figure alongside the political structure, or you hear things like, hundreds of political party members moved to the governing party. These are real figures. I'm talking political figures who have structures.
Who are currently in power.
Exactly, and have structures that could shake or move things. Though the last election does not, figures from the last election, what data shows does not necessarily speak in that light when it comes to the presidential election, because even in these regions, the man who got the numbers in terms of vote cast was Peter Obi, and was Peter Obi, yes, and it doesn't belong to the PDP. But that said, do you think that this trend could affect the democratic process going forward, and even voter confidence in the political system, a system where voters are seeing that, politicians keep moving and moving? How do they trust the system?
Well, it shows to Nigerians that politics is beyond emotion. A lot of the vote that Peter Obi got in the last election, you and I know that most of them are emotional votes. And because they are emotional votes, that's why a lot of people, Labour Party candidates who did not even campaign enough or do enough, won their constituency. Who would have thought that a Banky W, who is very popular, in PDP and as a Nigerian, would lose to what is that name? Yofa Chief or something like that, who was the Labour Party candidate for Lagos Island. And then mostly Albaniko's son and Banky W will lose to that guy. And because these people have now shown their true color, many of them having gotten to the National Assembly on the platform of that emotional vote in the last election, we've seen many of them now defected from even the Labour Party to the ruling APC for expediency. So I think it opens the eyes of the voters more to be logical rather than emotional when it comes to the next series of election, which is on the long run going to be beneficial to the Nigerian political system, because now voters will be more conscious and not emotional when they are casting their votes.
Those who definitely would debate and disagree with you that those votes cast emotional. But let's very quickly move to the final question on the show, because we got to go. Can we still hold elections, Benga, in this country that will reflect the real or true political competition under these conditions where politicians moving from one party to another? Do you think that the next, especially 2027 elections, could reflect real competition? Do you think 2027 is going to be competitive? Some say already it's going to be a walk in the park for the president.
Nah, I don't believe it's going to be a walk in the park for the president. I believe we can still have an election that will reflect a very competitive voting pattern in the country. All that will require for that to happen is that politician needs to now prepare earlier. You know, before now, politicians will wait for 1 year to the election, 6 months to the election, 9 months to the election, especially politicians in the opposition party, before, you know, doing their groundwork and their homework. And you see, politics stands on a tripod. One is money, the other leg of the tripod is people, the third leg is time. You know, most often than not, the people in opposition party do not have as much money as people in the main party, in the ruling party. They do not have as much people as people in the ruling party. Now, time that's supposed to be advantageous to them, many of them do not take full advantage of it. They wait till 9 months, 1 year before election, before starting to do their groundwork. We have 2 years to the next election now. And if politicians in the opposition party want to bring out a shocker, one, they need to be realistic as to their ambition. So, if you look at the resources you have, and you see that these resources you have is likely going to help you win at the State House of Assembly level, don't be gunning for the National House of Rep. If you see that so gunning for Senate, if it will help you to win for Senate, don't be gunning for governorship. You know, be first and foremost realistic to yourself, so that that resources will be like the Yoruba adage that says we should pee on one spot so that it can form very well. Not that it will be scattered everywhere and then the impact will not be felt.
Benga, we'll just leave things there. We'll continue to monitor this. We hear even further reports of more defections to come. Some have said that the presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, most likely the deal is done for him to move to the All Progressives Congress. Meanwhile, there are talks of coalition happening with the Social Democratic Party at the center of that. We'll see how that goes. Of course, you cannot dismiss the might of Atiku Abubakar, former Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and presidential candidate of the PDP in the 2023 general election, who's most likely looking to contest again in 2027. There is Peter Obi of the Labour Party, and indeed, we don't know which other candidates would be throwing his or her hat in the ring for the next elections. But we'll leave things here. As mentioned, Benga Yonuga Paul is a political commentator. He joined me virtually today on Homo Politicus. Thank you so much, Benga.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate that. Well, our Nigerians, there you go. We will see how things go. We'll keep monitoring this development, political development, and bring you further conversations. Until next time on Homo Politicus, please be safe. God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Kingsley Bass is my name. Bye for now.
Truth. Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth. Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.